I grew up in a small town in Connecticut with very few Jews. I remember a penny being tossed at me in the school hallway in elementary school, and I have a hazy memory that as the new girl in town, I wasn't invited to a sleepover at my evangelical Christian friend's house because I was going to hell. We lived on a pond, my parents still do, and after I learned about the Shoah, I started to have a recurring nightmare that the Nazis were invading the pond over and over again, night after night. I never truly felt unsafe in our small town, but my Jewishness was always exposed, something that filled me with both pride and a profound sense of vulnerability. I haven't felt that same kind of exposure as a Jew in 40 years, but I'm feeling it now. Not in my small town in Connecticut, but in the very Jewish city of New York. We are close to the end of a very volatile mayor's race, where Jews in Israel have been at the center of the conversation. You could be a Jew who is Zionist or anti-Zionist, secular or religious, liberal or conservative. There is no escaping the magnifying glass the Jewish people are under. For such a small people, we sure do get a lot of attention. This past week marks 7 years since the massacre at the Tree of Life Synagogue, where 11 Jews were murdered for attending shul on an October Shabbat morning. Who imagined in 2025 that we would be speaking about the rise of anti-Semitism? Who would have thought that Israel would be an issue that would take up so much airtime in our local and national elections and discourse? The exposure that the Jewish community is experiencing is deeply unsettling, to say the least. This past summer, Jewish teen groups on tours in Europe were told not to wear any jewelry or clothes that identified them as Jews. No Magen Davids, no mezuzot hanging from their necks. Israelis have changed the way they travel and where they go. Boulder, DC, and Manchester are locations that we've added to the list of Pittsburgh, Poway, and Colleyville. I understand the fear and the worry. The world is on fire. Israel is on fire. Our country is on fire, and our city is on fire. In this week's Parashat, Lekha, Abraham receives the call, Lekh Lecha me'artzecha u'mimoledecha u'mibeit avicha el haaretz asher areka. Go forth from your native land and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. Because the Torah grants us no information about why Avram was commissioned by God, the Midrashim try to fill in the blanks. In Bereshit Rabbah, Rabbi Yitzchak teaches on the opening verse of Lekh Lecha when we read, and he brings in a verse from the Psalms, "Listen, daughter, see, and incline your ear. Forget your people and your father's house. Mi beit avicha." You hear the verse from Lekh Lecha that says you should go forth, mi beit avicha, from your father's house. And then you hear the same word in this verse from Psalms, from your father's house. And then that's called the petichta, the opening line to the Midrash. This is analogous to one who is passing from place to place and saw a castle on fire. He said, "Is it possible that this building has no one in charge of it?" The owner of the building looked out at him and said, "I am the owner of the building." This is likened to Abraham saying, "Is it possible that this world is without someone in charge?" The Holy One looked at him and said, "I am the owner of the world." This moment when Avram notices the metaphorical castle ablaze and asks whether there is a master of the house, is the very moment, according to the Midrash, that precedes God's summons to him, Lekh, Lekha, go forth. What about this moment caused God to commission Avraham? One read of this Midrash is that Avraham was chosen because he felt the intense dissonance between order, beauty, and grandeur of the palace and the destructive chaos and disorder of the fire consuming it. How could it be that a creation designed with such intention and purpose devolved into such madness? It is this gap, this dissonance, that causes Avraham to question whether anyone is in charge. It is his assertion also that there is a gap between what is and what ought to be, the tragic gap, as Parker Palmer calls it, that is the beginning of his faith and his calling. In his time, Avraham seems to be the only one who notices the world engulfed in flames and is disturbed by it. We, however, are living in a time where we can see all the bira doleket, the castle of flame, and feel the fire surrounding us. What differs in our time, I think, is what we believe has caused the fire. For some of us, Assemblyman Mandani's language feels dangerous, not just because it is anti-Zionist, but because it feels like incitement. His seeming obsession with Israel, the occupation, and the disavowal of the legitimacy of Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state is not only deeply disturbing, but an affront to the Jewish people and our most precious commitments. Of course, it's important to say that there are many Jews that are attracted to him, particularly young Jews, for that very reason. For others, Governor Cuomo is a candidate who has been a danger to women and has not owned his mistakes. In addition, there is profound concern that he has too much allegiance to our current president and those in his government who have sounded anti-Semitic tropes, conspiracy theories, and weaponized anti-Semitism for their own pernicious ends. This puts the Jewish people at risk. I know there is also significant concern among many of us that the Jewish people's power has diminished. After all, if someone like Mamdani can even win the primary, that is in some way an indication that Jewish power is diminished. We are fractured. There is deep discord where our priorities lie, Israel being among the most contentious. Our dirty laundry is being displayed and played out on the local and national stage. This mayoral election is the prism through which to see all the divides amongst our community, divides between generations around what Zionism should or shouldn't be, or whether it even should be at all, or even what safety looks like for the Jewish people. I think for most of us, the discourse has become so toxic, categorical, and extreme amidst an election where it feels like there is no good choice and there is so much confusion, that the greatest fear is that our communities will become as polarized as our nation, instead of being a place or places of resilience, comfort, compassion, and inspiration. I am not going to rank these hierarchies of fear and danger. I believe there is some significant truth in all of them, but I can tell you that we all rank them differently. What scares some of us the most is not the same thing that scares others of us the most. The reality is that we all have a hierarchy of values that drive our feelings and our analysis of this present moment, which is informed by our own lived experiences and histories. In Jonathan Haidt's book, The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion, he argues that our moral intuitions are guided by 6 foundational values. The first, care versus harm, sensitivity to suffering and the need for compassion and kindness. Second, fairness versus cheating, a sense of justice and reciprocity. 3, loyalty versus betrayal, group cohesion, patriotism, and the obligations of belonging. 4, authority versus subversion, respect for social hierarchy, tradition, and order. 5th, sanctity versus degradation, reverence for the sacred and avoidance of contamination. And 6, liberty versus oppression, the desire for freedom from domination and the opposition to tyranny. All human beings are guided by these values in some way, but the emphasis and hierarchy of these values is different for everyone. His book is premised on the notion that liberals and conservatives rank these particular pieces very differently, that liberals tend to prioritize care and conservatives tend to prioritize authority and loyalty. So that's just what it is. And so he says that we all prioritize. It's not that any of us are devoid of care or that we're not devoid of loyalty or the sense of what our relationship is to authority, but based on where we are, and often that aligns around political alliances, we all have a different way, what kind of gets at us the most. Implicit in this understanding is that when we prioritize certain values over others, we also often have gaps in awareness or blind spots that prevent us from tolerating other people's opinions. I'll admit that at times I can't understand what makes people believe what they do. And that makes it hard, especially now when tensions run high, when fear hovers close, and when among us are those who are drawing painful lines of division through our community. Even rabbis and other leaders, some are drawing those lines, and others are being cast as loyalists or traitors based solely on how they might vote. I might disagree with your particular practice, your particular analysis. You might disagree with mine if we had the chance to sit down together and talk it through. And that's all right. It's okay that we have a different analysis, you and me, those of us sitting in this congregation, those joining us from afar. It's okay. I can live with that. I hope you can too. If what we see or what we seek is a monolithic community, one that does not tolerate diversity even to the slightest degree, or celebrate the beauty of the tapestry that makes up our congregation, that would be a choice. But it is not a choice that Roli, Becca, or I are willing to make. Certainly not over an election that will be decided in just a matter of days. When all the ballots are counted on November 4th, or perhaps in the early hours of the 5th, our work as a community will remain the same: to pray together, to learn together, to care for one another, and to pursue justice together. No matter who is elected, our responsibility will be to hold him, and someday her, I hope, accountable for the safety of our people and the safety of others, for the words he speaks and the actions he takes. We will continue to fight for the values that matters most to us and the city we call home. That calling does not change whether our candidate wins or loses, whether he is Republican, Democrat, or independent. The castle is aflame. There is no doubt. Might we be like Avram in this week's Parashat, who looks at the fire engulfing what is most precious to him and feels the gap, feels the discord, feels the pain of so much that is crumbling before our eyes, but knows it should be otherwise. It is in the discord that Abraham's faith is born. Might we look inward at our own commitments in faith rather than castigating someone else's choices? With all his doubt about this world, Abraham asks if the palace had an owner. He couldn't fathom that no one cared enough to put out the flames. He raised his voice to both question and protest at the same time. In his question and God's response, a number of powerful possibilities begin to emerge. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks writes, "When God said, 'I am the owner of the palace,' it is as if God were saying to Abraham, 'I need you to help me put out the flames.'" Dr. Paul Mandel of the Schechter Institute offers another response. He teaches that when God responds, "I am the owner of the palace," God is saying that God is in fact trapped in the fire. God too is engulfed by the flames and needs Abraham to rescue God and God's image in the world. And Rabbi Sarah Hurwitz provides an alternative read. Abraham's question, she says, "Is it possible that the castle has no owner?" catalyzes God into action. Abraham implies in asking that question that the world is no longer sustainable as it is. Something must change. God hears Abraham and has an awakening and says, "I am the master of the world." It's a very radical read of the text. I'm just going to say it again if you missed it. She says, Rabbi Sarah Horowitz, who's the first Maharat, she says when Abraham asked the question, "Who's the owner of the palace? Does the palace not have an owner?" She said Abraham is implying that the world is no longer sustainable as it is, which causes God to consider, I have to act. I have to be the owner of this palace. It is God God hears Abraham, and it's God that has the awakening, not Abraham. She catalyzes God to have the awakening, or Abraham catalyzes God. Sarah catalyzes us to realize that Abraham causes God to have an awakening. I am the master of the world, God realizes, and sends Abraham away from the burning castle out into the world. Abraham sees the fire and catalyzes God to act. In this uncertain moment, with fear and anger abounding, where the discourse has become more and more hateful and polarizing, of which, by the way, the Jewish people are a big factor in that. We need to own that. The Jewish people are a big, big part of what is making this campaign hateful and polarizing, not exclusively, but significantly. Perhaps we, like Abraham, need to pay attention to the fire that is ablaze, to listen to the fear in each other's voices, and as Roli said last week, to awaken some compassion in and for our broken hearts, our tattered souls, and our moral injury, which needs some care. Reducing the complexity of this moment will not make us stronger after the election. And maybe we all need to hold a little doubt in our self-righteousness, like Abraham. God needs us to put out the flames, not douse them with oil. We need to rescue our faith, its purpose and mission. We need to affirm God's presence in the world and to resist evil and hatred, inflammatory speech, and to demand a different world, not to succumb to the world as it is. Oh, dear people Israel, a people that I love, that I have devoted my life to. Our beginnings were with Avram. Let us not forget his audaciousness and his faithfulness. Let us not give into a world on fire, but affirm a faith, a tradition that sets us on a path to a promised land that has yet to be. Lekha, Get out of your land. The Svat Emet says on this verse, a person should always keep on walking, hamehalech, like Lekha, to some new possibility. Let us try to walk forward, no matter what comes on Tuesday, believing it can be so and working to make it so. Maybe then, instead of being a world ablaze, it will become a world full of light, a castle full of light, which is another read of that midrash, that instead of being a world ablaze, it is a castle filled with light. Ken Yehi Ratzon. So may it be.